Today, I'm happy to welcome back Patrick Montgomery to the podcast. We previously had him on to talk about Baseball's Great Expectations, a book I loved. And now he's back to talk about A Dynasty Interrupted, the rise and fall of the 1980s Atlanta Braves. How you doing today, Patrick?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always a joy to talk baseball.
We had such a great time talking about Baseball's Great Expectations. As soon as I saw you had another book out already, I was like, we got to get you back on. I mean, you must have been working on this almost immediately after you finished up the last one. The
I
turnaround time was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. As I'm wrapping up a book, I start thinking about the next project, and pretty much before the book's in print, I have a head start on my next book. So
Wow. So are you already working on something else right now?
these are my notes for the next book. This is a interview with a Buck Showalter about my next project. So
Wow.
it's gonna be about the
Fantastic.
about kind of like bad timing for Buck Showalter. Always he was like the
Yeah.
bridesmaid. Yankees and the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. I mean, it didn't work for the Mets, but I mean, the man's a baseball lifer. That's an amazing manager and should be in the Hall of Fame. But it's not working. But I think one day maybe we'll see something new with him.
Yeah. Well, great. So we are recording this the day after the passing of Ted Turner.
Hmm.
I think that people, especially of a certain generation, they kind of think of George Steinbrenner as sort of the prototypical bombastic owner. But Ted really kind of gave him a run for his money in some ways here. Uh, what kind of owner was Ted Turner?
There must be something about maritime guys. I mean, Steinbrenner owned the shipbuilding business, and Ted Turner was America's captain. So I mean, he was the America's Cup captain and did a lot with that as well. There must be something in the water. That's all I could think. But Ted Turner was, it's hard to say you're a self-made man when you had a head start, but he really was a self-made man in many ways. He worked his butt off through billboards and then got into TV. And the TV was a very huge and scary jump for him to try to get into owning the TV stations. And really, it was a lot of serendipity to make the Braves and TBS happen, but it happened. And Ted Turner was a pioneer in broadcast rights for teams, and teams like Yankees and Yes and the Mets or whatever. They all should tip their cap to Ted Turner for what he did for the owners.
Yeah, I was reading one of his obituaries yesterday, and he really has shaped the modern world in so many ways that I didn't expect. And he turned the Atlanta Braves into a national brand, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit for the Braves' success.
Absolutely. I mean, the Braves, the last were in the playoffs in 1969 before he was owner. And then that was a long abyss. I mean, all he really had to talk about and feel about was Henry Aaron. But once Henry Aaron hit his 715th, it was kind of like, now what? About a year later, Hank Aaron was back in Milwaukee with the Brewers. So it was a dark time to be a Braves fan. And then along came Joe Torre. I guess Ted Turner wanted to bring somebody in that had some value. Uh, Torrey was a big Braves hero in the past, and he was a big name manager who did well, not too well in New York, but he still managed New York well enough on the big stage. And he wanted to bring the big stage to Atlanta. Atlanta has always had like a second city feeling where they're like, we're not LA, we're not New York, but Ted Turner wanted to bring some of that big city to Atlanta with Joe Torre, and it worked quickly. I mean, Torrey took a team that was not that good. Now, we have to remember that um, Bobby Cox left and Joe Torre came in. And Bobby Cox did do a lot of great work to make that team what it became. But Joe Torre took those young players and showed them how to win.
Uh, I want to go back just a little bit here because this was a little tidbit in the book. Ted Turner manages a game, correct?
He did. And the Major League Baseball commissioner thought that was a conflict of interest and forbid him from doing it again. Said he wasn't really properly qualified, didn't have the experience. It'll make a travesty of the game. So he's like, fine, I'll go down to minor leagues and I'll be a manager down there. And so I have it. But I just think that baseball didn't want to have one owner be that powerful across the board. So
Yeah, yeah.
it could have
I
happened
think that's a
today.
good.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you see Steve Cohen, the next Mets manager. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
uh,
think George would have loved to have done that.
yeah, yeah. Would you describe Ted Turner's ownership style as hands on, or because people talk about? I mean, everyone knows the stories about Steinbrenner and Billy Martin and him calling the shots. Essentially, was Turner similar? Was he more or less hands on than a Steinbrenner?
I don't think he was as near as hands-on as Steinbrenner. I believe that he trusted his baseball people, but ultimately he wanted a shiny, big product that can make a big impression on the national stage. I mean, I hate to say it, but it all comes down to ratings. And he had TBS, and he wanted to make him must-watch TV. And with that, he had Bob Horner, bigger than life, big shaggy hair, big power. Dale Murphy was, like the all-American boy, drank milk, didn't drink alcohol and didn't cuss. I mean, so it was straight out of Hollywood casting. It felt like, and that's what Ted Turner was about. He's about ratings, and so I think ultimately the baseball mattered. Of course, he's ego wanted to see the Braves win, but he also wanted to put up a good product for the consumer.
So if we go back to the early '80s, we kind of got into this a little bit here. We think of the Braves as this kind of perennial contender now, and that was not really the case back in the early '80s. What is this team that they're working with like? Are there great expectations for
Yeah.
these teams?
No. See, we have to put it back in the context of the early '80s. Uh, People didn't have cable TV. Really, a lot of people, it was still antennas. And then the cable boom started happening, and baseball fans were starting to get involved in these teams like the Braves that were on TBS all the time, the Cubs, WGN. Uh, so when I was a kid, I'm from New Jersey, New York, but I grew up in Key West for about 4 or 5 years in the '80s, and I had cable TV for the first time. I was so excited. And as a baseball fan, I could watch the Cubs or the Braves. And both were kind of perennial losers, not really doing that well. And for a brief time, the Braves caught fire. The Cubs caught fire. I mean, Keith Moreland, the Rick Sutcliffe's, Sandberg. Then you had the Braves, same thing with Torrey and Horner and Chambliss and of course Dale Murphy. So it was really just magical TV if you were a kid in the '80s. That became my babysitter in many ways on a Saturday afternoon. I was more than happy to stay home and watch the games. They were not really good teams for a little while, long time, but they were good teams because you watched them and you cared. And I think once the audience came up, Ted Turner and probably the Cubs are like, all right, now we're a product. We have to invest and put the players out in the field to make people really tune in. And I was that guy. I mean, I remember watching the playoffs when they lost to the Cardinals, and I was sad. I mean, I'm a lifelong Yankees fan, but I kind of felt like it was okay to kind of cheat on the Yankees because it was a National League team. Um, so I did, and I enjoyed that time with the Braves very much so.
You've mentioned a couple of the players here. What players are we talking about here? Who were sort of like the main cast of these early Braves '80s Braves teams here?
Phil Negro, of
Yep.
course. Then you had Dale Murphy. You had Bob Horner, but the player that kind of gets forgotten about very much so is Chris Chambliss. Chris Chambliss, before he came in, the Braves knew they had a possible perennial All Star in Dale Murphy, but they didn't really know how to use him. They had him as catcher. He wasn't a failed catcher, but he led his he led the league in errors, I believe, and just was not a very good backstop back there. But I break down in the book about that may not be necessarily true. He caught Phil Necro more than all the other catchers did. And any catcher will tell you, you're going to lead the league in errors if you're catching Phil Necro. So I think that was a little misleading. But then he went to first base and was not exactly a plus defender there as well. They realized that they needed his leadership and his bat in the lineup. So they had to find a way to get the best player in the lineup in a way that's going to help them defensively. So they acquired Chris Chambliss. And Chris Chambliss was a steadying influence. He was on the backside of 30 already, had won championships, won a gold glove. So him going to the corner there allowed the Braves to go, okay, we can move our best player to an area that he can thrive. They put him in the outfield, and he became a Gold Glover out there, led the National League in home runs several times, and All Star MVP. I mean, the list goes on for him. I mean, he should be in the Hall of Fame, of course, but um,
I was
really
gonna
did
ask you
help.
if you thought that he has a Hall of Fame case. I was just pulling up his stats right before this, and it's like, man, he really was the dominant guy of the '80s.
He was the dominant guy in the '80s, and in the book, I compare Dale Murphy to a recent player that was elected in the Hall of Fame that didn't make it, I believe, by one vote or two votes. And when I broke down, you don't know who the player is, player A and Dale Murphy. And I talk about Tim Ryan going, if this person's not getting the vote, then they should turn in their voter card. This is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. And Dale Murphy was on it for 10 years and barely got a good sniff. Player A goes in, no problem, who is Suzuki. But in many categories, Dale Murphy was a superior player. I know that's blasphemy to a lot of people out there, but if you step back and look at Dale Murphy's numbers, it's really it's really clear to me. So how does one player get in and travesty when it's not voted in 100%, and one player, perhaps better, is overlooked? So I thought that the Veterans Committee would kind of, that's why they're there to fix these mistakes, and they're still not doing it. And to go on a rampage about that, Don Mattingly, same player, was best player in the '80s in the American League. Same thing, got ripped off. Injuries happened, back injury, and he didn't make it. And talking to Dale Murphy for the book, he's like, people did not realize how hurt I was. I had bad knees, I had a bad back, but it's like they were just sapping the life out of me. I couldn't do what I could do anymore. I mean, it's really sad because when you were in the '80s as a kid, you watched him play. It was like Mickey Mantle, but Mickey Mantle, you would see him in the locker room with the bandages wrapped up in crutches or whatever. But Dale Murphy, I guess, was a little more low key and kind of was able to hide the injuries from people a little more. So the fans didn't realize how hurt he really was and what a battle it was for him just to play. So players, if you put up 10 amazing years in the major leagues, there's no reason why you should not be in the Hall of Fame with those numbers. That's my tirade.
I
I'm
think
good.
that there's no, I agree, and I think that there's become a shift in thought now where it's like that period of dominance is sort of what matters, and I think that the '80s were unfairly immediately compared to the '90s, where the numbers were outrageous, and that's how your Mattingleys, your Murphys, your Lou Whitakers, how they sort of get swept under the rug a little bit, and I think that's changing now, and I hope it does happen because he really was arguably the best player of the '80s. I think there's a case to be
Yep.
made there. So
On
yeah,
both American League,
yeah,
National League, I think they mirror well.
yeah. So 1982, and I had to check my math on this. This team comes out of nowhere. They win 49 more games. Is that correct?
Mhm.
49 more games. That
Yes.
is outrageous. Like almost impossible to comprehend how a team can make that kind of. What happens that year? What goes right for them that year?
Chris Chambliss comes in and he solidified the team. You had Bob Watson come in as also, who was like an unofficial coach on the field, who just kind of steadied these players in there. Dale Murphy, Bob Warner, great players, and other players in the field, they were really good defensively. They kept leading the National League in double plays, so it shows that you have a strong up the middle. You have Bruce Benedict, coming in, who's also showing good catching skills. So up the middle, you had catcher, second base, third, shortstop, and center field all coming together to form that nice, strong defense, um, and allowed the offense a chance to really do well. Bob Horner was an amazing hitter. I mean, he was the number one pick in the draft from Arizona State, came in and was rookie of the year. Then Dale Murphy came in shortly after, same kind of scenario. So they had great young talent, and they finally had a manager that was like, I mean, Cox was awesome as well, but Torrey was kind of able to helped Dale Murphy make the transition from his position to the outfield. I mean, we know that Joe Torre had that as well, going from catcher to third base, and so it was a hard thing mentally to make that switch. And Joe Torre was able to just I think mentally get the team where no, he helped them get to where they had to go.
So this team makes a run to they lose the Cardinals finally in the playoffs. This is a team that is set up, it looks like, to be successful for years, and really by 1985 is kind of really the last year for this mini run that this team has here.
Absolutely.
What goes wrong? What why doesn't this become the dynasty, quote unquote, of the 90s for the Braves? What happens here?
The Braves in 1982 had the youngest offense in the National League from a player's age. When they averaged out the regulars and the bench, whatever, they were the youngest team in the National League when it came to offense. So you would think, okay, this is a team on the rise, and they were, but their starting rotation was not the same. Phil Negro was already in his early mid 40s, and I mean, kept pitching. The knuckleball kept going, but I mean, he sucked a lot of innings up, which is great. Uh, but you need more younger starters to come up through there. And you had Pascual Perez that was coming up. You had players like Zane Smith. I mean, so you had young players coming up, but impatience was the killer. I talked about it before with Ted Turner. I mean, not every player was going to win 16, 18 games like Phil Negro. And the impatience there is like, I need this, I need that. And they just pushed too hard to get those starters in there. And baseball's pitching, and the pitching wasn't there. I mean, Joe Torre in the book, I keep giving quotes by Joe Torre saying, "Oh, we need one more starter. We need one more starter. One more guy in the bullpen." That's a song That's a song for the last 100 years in baseball. We need one more
Yeah.
starter. We need that, and they just couldn't get that one more starter to really pan out, and that's what happened. Then impatience took over. Bruce Sutter, came in. Len Barker came in. These are huge names in the '80s. Len Barker came off a perfect game. Like all of a sudden, that's it. New shiny toy. Turner wanted him, and it happened. Big trade, huge free agent signing at the end of the year to get him. Uh, Bruce Sutter, I mean, they paid for the deal for the next 30 years to get him. It's like $1 million a year for the next 30 years for that. He came in, was injured, never really did anything for the Braves. I mean, he was an all-star closer. He was a Hall of Fame closer, but not for the Braves. So that's a downfall right there.
Yeah. And it's interesting then that the Braves in the 90s build their team around pitching. They've learned their lessons here, and they have the dominant pitching finally. And it's
Absolutely, and but like, don't forget that the Braves drafted Randy Johnson as well, and that was during Joe Torre's time of the team. So you had young pitchers coming, just the patience wasn't there. I mean, Randy Johnson, of course, didn't sign with the Braves, but I mean, but still, to think they could have had Randy Johnson, then later Greg Maddux, and of course, like all the young guns that came through there. I mean, so they learned. I don't think it was Ted Turner. I think that baseball people learned you need the pitching. So that was a valuable lesson that the early '80s taught them.
yeah. Um, yeah, I know you got to talk to all sorts of fascinating guys for
Mhm.
this book, including Joe. We talked about Joe Torre a little bit here, and I know you got to talk to him for the book. He, it's funny because he has this pretty successful run with the Braves here, and then when he joins the Yankees, the press is, oh, he's not ready. He can't. He's not. This is not it for him
Blew
here.
his show. Yeah.
Uh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Kills me every
What did
time.
Joe? Did you talk about any of this with Joe? Like what he learned from the Braves, what that experience was like, and how he ended up taking that to the Yankees, what he thought about coming over there? Because really, you look back at it now, it's like he did a great job with the Braves. The
He
Yankees should
did.
have been excited to have him. Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, people forget that Joe Torre, I mean, first place, and second place for the Braves, 82, 83, 84. And that was the National League West with two divisions in each league now. So we don't have all these divisions and all these wild card spots or whatever. You had two playoff spots in each league, and to finish second back to back years in the NL West was not something to be taken lightly. I mean, you had the Dodgers, you had the young and upcoming Padres, you had the Giants, who were a tough team, It was a dogfight, and Torrey took them there. Now, does he think he was let go unfairly? Yes, of course. But when he went to the Yankees, he felt as if he was kind of ready for it because he went through the ringer with an owner that was kind of roller coaster, and that's the name of the chapter in the book, roller coaster. And so he went there with the Ted Turner. He knew what to expect, and going into his time runner. People forget that with the Yankees, when Joe came in, even after they announced him, it wasn't really sure he was actually going to manage because the Yankees went back to Buck Showalter and they said, "Hey, let's talk again, and we'll move Joe to coaching spot or front office or whatever it is." So it was kind of still up in the air about whether or not even Torrey was the guy, even after they introduced him. Joe Torre was a fortunate manager in a lot of ways, but he was the right personality and right job, right person for the job each time.
Yeah. Well, the book, this is a team that people don't give a lot of credit to. I think it's kind of forgotten. I will say that because
Yes,
they, again, as you mentioned, it is a very talented, it is a fantastic come from behind story here. It's a great book, and I'm so glad you wrote this book. And it gave me a lot of more respect for those '80s Braves teams that I really didn't have before reading it. Uh, Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and we'll have you back to talk about Buck, hopefully in a couple of years here.
and like with the book that I just wrote, I mean, and I shouldn't even say this, but there's an error on the last chapter, and you go back and forth, and there's a typo, and it's in there where I said the Yankees and Braves were tied at 3-3 in the series. That was not true. They went to New York, of course, 3-2, and I can't believe that that thing made it in the book even after. So I'm horrified by it. So if you're a reader and you read that, please know that I know better. I know a lot better because I watched that game. I watched all the games, and so that's your nightmare as a writer to have something like that in there when you know better. So there you go. My apology on
But
that.
we forgive you. I'll speak on behalf of the people here. We
Okay.
we, we forgive
Yes.
you. We've all
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
all been there.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible.
I totally get it. Well, Patrick, thanks again. This has been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and I love your product and keep it up.